Hi, I'm Zanzi. This is Farmers Inside Track, proudly brought to you by Food from Zanzi. My name is Patricia Tembo, your host, and welcome to today's Farmer Mentor episode. So today we speak to Simphiwe Hlubi, who is a livestock farmer based in Gauteng. Join us as he shares some of his tips and tricks on how he's managed to scale his farming business. Mr. Simphiwe Hlubi, welcome to Farmers Inside Track. We are so happy to have you on today's episode as our farmer mentor. So welcome. We're looking forward to gaining some wisdom and insight from you.
Good day, Patricia. I hope you're good.
Mr. Hlubi, I know you're a farmer in Gauteng, but how did the journey into agriculture actually begin? Where did the farming business actually start for you?
I grew up in KZN. That's where I'm originally from, the place called Ladies in Nambiting. So I was born and bred. So the journey began there. I grew up with my grandmother from my mother's side. She was into agriculture. So I think that's where we started doing wulusa, being a herdsman as you're growing up. And fortunately enough, in KZN, where I grew up, we had privileges of having, land where we could plant maize, we could plant sorghum and sugar trays and stuff like that. So that's where I grew up. I learned that experience in terms of the farming, and I learned the love. I started growing the love from there, and also I had cattle as well. So I grew up like that. So the love of agriculture started growing from there. And obviously went to high school when I had to choose the subjects now for my university after my university days. I wanted to do mechanical engineering, but fortunately my mother gave an advice, which is I'm always grateful for, to say, do something that is food related, something that feeds the nation. You'll never go hungry, you'll never go poor.
Yeah.
So I took a gap year. I did IT for a whole year. It was called information systems for the year. And then the following year, 2005, I went and registered for in agricultural course management in CUT, Central University of Technology, Free State, where I did my national diploma in agricultural management, where we were measuring in both animal science and plant science. Where that's where I actually started doing my program, finished it off, did my BTech. And while I was doing that, I was actually doing very well. Also, I was still doing some farming at home also, because as we were growing up, you get to have your own few cattle there and there from the family.
Yeah.
So that's how it was basically growing. While I was doing my BTech, I got into a program with McCain Foods. I started working with them. I was employed as a graduate trainee for the agric side, where I was doing agriculture. And through that, while I was working for McCain Foods, I was working in the agronomy section, where we were basically, agronomy is the study of plants using science. So we were developing and doing trials for the new crops, to see the adaptability of new cultivars that have been trialed before they can plant. So I worked there, fell in love. So, cut story short, been working for various sectors in agriculture. And then also, while I was doing my diploma, I think you asked me a question. I did my experiential learning with one of the big farmers in KZN, which is the Greens farmers. They do dairy, cattle, where they were using more standard Friesland and Jersey. So they were also doing Simmendier cattle, and also they were doing brangers. Fell in love with livestock. From there, from my savings, I started buying a few cattle, started buying a few goats here and there. But then I had moved to Gauteng now. No longer in KZN. I got a job this side in Gauteng. Started doing informal farming. What do you call Ibaya? It's mostly done where there's hostels and stuff. From people from the rural areas, they'll combine, come together and do Ibaya. And then that's how we basically do the farming part of things. So, sports cattle there, and I think that journey, I never looked back until 2024. I started looking for my own farm where I'm currently at now. And at some point, I used to share at least a farm with one of my friends from KZN as well, where we were raising cattle. We didn't have a specific brand, like a specific breed of cattle. We were just doing mixed breeding. Yeah. Obviously, we'd feedlot and sell to your informal settlement. And sometimes we'll obviously sell to funeral parlors that run promotions for if one has basically that. So currently now we are based in Rayton. I was fortunate, yes, currently sitting in a farm of 20 hectares, which obviously is not a very big size farm. And we're currently doing small stock, which is water goats, and I'm also doing sheep, and also we're doing chickens. So currently as we speak now, we're doing broiler chickens. As we speak now, and then what we did, so I do have the facility. Fortunately enough, the farmer had a facility to actually do feedlotting. There is a facility that can house about 300 livestock. do about, say, a month, about 10 livestock where we feedlot and then we sell like that. We feedlot and we sell. But it's not a big farm, like I said. It's not a very huge size farm. But most of the livestock now that we have, we're fortunate in KZN, my father's side of the family now, they were fortunate to have been given a farm, which is about 86 hectares. So I've taken most of my livestock in terms of your cattle. Makes sense that I move them there. And then whenever I want to do some breeding, whenever I want to do some breeding, I invest in more into KZN because we've got most of the land that side.
Yeah.
And then this side, it's a matter of your buy and sell. I would buy and sell, especially livestock, your cattle, your feedlot, and then you just sell. Basically, that is that.
There's a lot that she has shared. There's a lot that I'd love to get into a little bit more. But going back, as you said, you've had extensive an education in agriculture itself. As you said, the experience that you've gained also working as an agronomist. Those are skills, of course, I'm assuming that you have been able to put into the business as well, into the farm and, the growth of it. So maybe talk us through how the main factors that have enabled you to scale the business to where you are today, since I suppose 2024 when you started and, previously in KZN as well, where you have the livestock, the cattle going. Maybe how have you scaled over the years?
Farming is not a very easy and simple business. I'll be honest with you. It looks very easy when you are outside, but once you start doing it yourself, it becomes a bit of a challenge. Because from basically the crop side of things, because I did, in KZN, I was planting maize for about 2 years, the yellow maize, 2 seasons. Only the last season that I did not plant because I was mostly focusing on developing the farm on this side.
Yes.
So most of the capital was directed to the health and business side of farming. So in KZN, I did maize. Although in terms of scaling up and trying to save costs is very key. Cost saving is very key to make sure that you optimize your farming. A simple thing, the old traditional ways of farming, instead of buying fertilizers, NPK and spending more on fertilizers, I would go and visit the guys that I work with that has feedlots. You collect basically the cow dung, which is your manure. You use that to put it before planting. Apply the old traditional ways to actually do that. You try and minimize your wastage, minimize the number of people that you have, your labor. But I think that what is key also, because when we are harvesting, it's knowing to have a right market also. Sometimes you'll plant without the market. We are selling agri, also for our maize, yes. That is in the Gauteng side of things, yes.
It sounds like, being resourceful is something that has really been key and instrumental to keeping the business sustainable, as you've shared. And of course, you've mentioned that farming is difficult. I'm quite sure any farmer listening fully understands and resonates with that sentiment. So what has been the biggest challenge to date that you have experienced with the businesses, both in, KZN and the farm here in Gauteng? What has been the challenges that you have had to navigate and how did you, I suppose, figure those things out?
I think it's the barriers to entry into the new markets. Those are the key. If there's one thing that is very key, the market. I think that's been the most challenges. I would say funding, but also funding. I would say funding in terms of, sometimes you'll want to do more. Tell you what, currently we're trying to venture into your vegetable farming now, because I have small stock. I do have the land, I have the water resources, but I do have the land that I can be able to do crops. But sometimes it becomes a challenge, things are not very cheap nowadays in terms of that. Having to buy new irrigation systems, having to buy a tractor, tractors. For you to buy a bigger tractor, you actually need to invest in more capital and more money. Once you've planted, transport for you to be able to transport your material into just a simple thing as well to transport it to a truck. It's not easy, it's not cheap. To be honest, as an average farmer coming from Sinakota as black people, you didn't grow up and being a first generation farmer. It's not easy sometimes to work around with things. And the good thing is we are sustainable. You never forget to pray also. God always makes a way. Those are the key challenges I think I would say that we do find. Take a look at the market in terms of diesel prices. We don't have control over those things, but it directly has an impact on whatever we're doing in the farming industry. Fertilizers have increased. Most of the fertilizer companies are, we import the thing. All of the chemicals have been imported. So whether you like it or not, prices will increase. And those are the key challenges we do face as farmers.
It's quite important that you've mentioned the barriers into entry because that's also something we're looking at in a separate article, looking at market competitiveness, at, how farmers are experiencing it. And a lot of farmers are forced to be price takers which of course, as you'd understand, can become an issue when it comes to looking at the cost margins, profit margins, etc. So for yourself, wanting to include your perspective on that as well, how do you navigate the market and remaining competitive within the markets? What are your tips and what is your experience with that?
It's very key that you don't have, just as a modern farmer nowadays, it's very key that you have multiple revenue streams that you generate, especially from the farming operation. Because, just one thing, you cannot survive on just one thing. From where I am now, currently I am in the farming, we are doing goats. I'm breeding a border goat. Goats will give back twice if you are lucky, as long as you're optimizing, your synchronization is good. It will give you twice money. But as a farmer, you've got day-to-day expenses that you need to run. So you're not going to wait to sell after a year or two. So what we've done from our side was to also venture into like your broiler farming, broiler chickens, where we are also farming broiler chickens. We're supplying to the informal market for now. I've approached a few retailers like your Pick and Pay. It's not even easy, getting to those markets because you need to comply with certain compliances. I've had a few guys whom have come to farm to come and see what we're doing, where we are trying to break into those markets. But also the informal market, I think that's what has sustained us also in terms of livestock. You buy and sell. You don't have to wait to breed number of years, but you can always buy and sell and put a bit of a markup so that you can be able to be sustainable in the farm. Broilers, it's 6 weeks. If you're lucky, it's 4 weeks, depending on how was your feeding programs and your management. So that is currently what is assisting us in terms of generating the revenue, to sustain the farm, to be able to pay for your lights, to be able to pay your staff, The other has been sustaining us. Like I said, you need to try and create multiple revenue streams for you to keep being sustainable in the farm. It's just not easy, but we keep pushing forward.
Yes, definitely. I think diversification, as you're saying, is incredibly important when you're looking at risk and I suppose risk management with farming. So looking at the principles now that have guided you and established you as a farmer, of course, there is the business aspect, but I think a lot of, farmers would know that there's also principles that it's different for every farmer that they're guided by that ensure that they're able to show up for the farm, for the business daily. It is difficult. I'm assuming some days are easier than others, but there's something that does keep you going. What are those principles that you hold on to?
Personally, what drives us, you need to always have a plan. You have your production plan, know what you are looking for. I think have a plan and stick to it. And also try and get loyal people and loyal staff. That those guys will reward you. They will assist you in terms of growing. And also pay your people well when you have them. Try and build that worker-employee relationship. The trustworthy working is very key. The trust-working relationship for you. And also, be trustworthy. I think it's very important. Sometimes doing farmers, I'll give you an example from the poultry, what we're doing. You might tell your customer that you're going to deliver at this certain time. And then, unfortunately, things changes, And then be a person that is able to communicate better with your clients. To say, be honest with them. To say, also communicate better. One this time, I cannot deliver at this point in time, but I'll be able to deliver at this time. Or if you are finding an alternative, be able to be transparent and tell the person to say, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing about it. Those one of the principles that has kept us going. Also, stick to your plan, Have those day-to-day plans, weekly plans, and also have a bigger picture in terms of where do you want to see yourself. You have a plan, say you're running a business, or you're no longer running a traditional business, you just want to have cash flow and look at them without even selling. You don't want to have cash flow and not sell. That's the reason why we exist in the farming space.
You worded that really well. Going forward, perhaps Mr. Hlubi, if you can share what sort of legacy you would like to create and leave behind within agriculture, your footprint in the agriculture sector, I suppose. What is the bigger picture for you?
I fallen in love with a small stock. At this point in time, we are doing strictly border goats, obviously in terms of a different type of a breed. In terms of the legacy, I would want to one day a proper registered stud breeder. Because when you proper registered stud breed, in terms of, yes, might make more money from being able to breed proper livestock. However, but it's something that also is some generational. I think it's very key that it's generational. I've got kids, 2 sons and 2 daughters. I would also want one day that they can look back and also have something that they can not just have my certificates on the wall that, my dad had the certificate, but I would want to have something, obviously, even if I'm not there one day, that they can have and be able to look at, be able to actually sustain their own families also with. We are currently also, while we are doing crops, we are also in the process of trying to do agribusiness, where we can sort of generate multiple revenue streams. We want to do sort of like, those nice farm chalets, farm stays, daily farm visits. It is something that we are actually in the process of doing. So we are also, as part of it, it also form part of our 5-10-year plan, what we want to do in the farming space. That's the legacy that I want to leave one day for the kids, for the family, and for the wife as well.
Wow, that's great. I think that's amazing. And hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you again in the future when you are a certified stud breeders to hear the lessons and the tips that you'd be sharing then. But as a farmer mentor now currently, for farmers who are new entrants and who are still establishing the business, what's the advice that you would give, especially to a new farmer coming in?
You can't manage something that you don't know. You can never manage something that you don't know. It's very important that one tries to gain more knowledge. What I'm saying, prepare, meaning just go out there and seek a bit of knowledge in terms of how things are done. Get a mentor, the local farmers or in your area. So I know the internet nowadays is capable and more than capable of providing information, but I can tell you there's something that is called tacit knowledge. The knowledge that one gains through experience over years. So get a mentor from your local farmers who've been doing it for some time. There are certain things that your books won't basically teaches you. And try and get a bit of knowledge, get a bit of education regarding whatever you're trying to do. And also, have a plan. Have a plan. Even if you might think you're still doing small, you want to do, but have a plan. No, this is where you are. This is where you want to be in the next, say, 2 years, 5 years time, or 10 years time. And stick to it, stick to that plan. That would be my sort of advice as well, Follow specific, because farming is not easy, bro. Things might turn and change. Yeah. Be adaptable, man. Be flexible to change when things are not going well.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would like to unpack or touch that we haven't spoken about yet before we wrap up.
So we are basically in rating. So if there's customers and market out there, people who are looking to buy order codes and also ship, they can also take us. Also, if you want to do broiler chickens in terms of your made chickens, always contact us. We are able to deliver. We are registered with reputable delivery companies. Our email is @outlook.com, where people can place orders. Available on TikTok and Instagram. On TikTok, it's @Wane_farms, and then also on Instagram, same Wane Farms. In the future, they will be able to obviously do farm tours for those who have schools and whatnot. Because we recently bought a few old milk for the goat that produces milk. Yeah. Try something different where we can be able to milk the goats and do some cheese processing, especially for the kids' ears.
Thank you so much to Simphiwe Hlubi for joining us on today's Farmer Mentor episode. If you'd like to read more about Simphiwe Hlubi's story, you can definitely visit www.foodformzansi.co.za. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. From myself, Patricia Timbo, our technical producer, Megan van der Vent, and the rest of #Team Food from Zanzi. Thank you for listening and keep growing with us.